Welcome to the Brian Craig Show podcast. My name is Brian Craig. The Brian Craig Show podcast is brought to you by Tom Laporta at Laporta Contracting and Roofing. He'll never sell you a roof you do not need. And if you're in the state of Florida and need roof replacement or repair, Tom Laporta at Laporta Contracting and Roofing is your guy. Online at laportaroofing.com. Now, J.D. Vance has just totally flipped out Europe. And he gave a speech in Europe that has all the European leaders in complete meltdown. Really, I mean, they're freaking out. I did not watch it live. And the reason, I mean, I saw a couple of the sound bites after it started to become, talked about. And I didn't watch it live because, I watch all the Trump speeches. I haven't missed maybe a couple of Trump speeches since he came down the escalator. I mean, I've been following every one. And the vice presidents, really paid too much attention to the vice presidents. But J.D. Vance has freaked out Europe, so I think it's worthy of listening to. And, the other day, President Trump gave an interview, and he was asked, is J.D. Vance your successor? He says no. So what President Trump meant by that is he's got to earn his endorsement, J.D. Vance, that what's going on right now with Christy and J.D., and, the list goes on. I don't have to go through all the contestants, but this is an episode of The Political Apprentice, who is going to be the second MAGA president. So that's kind of a good thing. Maybe not kind of, it is a good thing because, people don't get too comfortable. A little competition, makes people stand out. And JD did just that. And I saw two things. First is this is a translator you're going to hear from. This is the German representative at the Munich conference. And this is what really got me interested in this JD Vance speech. Listen.
This is why I cannot just ignore.
Now, he's a man with a lady translator. He's speaking German.
This is why I cannot just ignore what we heard before. I cannot not comment on the speech we heard by the U.S. Vice President. We fight for your right to be against us. That is the motto, one of the mottos of the Bundeswehr, and it stands for our democracy. This democracy that was just called into question by the U.S. Vice President, and not just the German democracy, but Europe as a whole.
Okay, so, you can tell he's really offended. He's and his attitude, Europe are snobs, and I really don't care about Europe. And this is just me. Now, maybe you guys are different. I did a live stream on YouTube this morning, and I brought this up, and most of the people that were in the live chat on my YouTube channel this morning agreed with this. In fact, the ones that did not were liberal trolls. And I said something, and then I added on to it, and everyone agreed that was MAGA in the live chat. And this is what I said in regards to Europe, because right now what's going on is the President Trump's about to end this I shouldn't call it fake war, this proxy war with Russia going on in Ukraine. And Europe, they love these wars because they get all kinds of money from us. NATO is their USAID. And I said this. I said, you know what? I don't care if Putin takes all of Ukraine. I'm worried about the United States, right? I'm worried about my family. I'm worried about my friends. I'm worried about my country. I'm not worried about Ukraine. And then I went on to say that I'm not even worried if Putin took over Europe. I just don't care. And the reason I can say that and not have any guilt about it is because things in this country are so awful right now after the 4 years of Biden. And our country hasn't just been invaded from our southern border and all the poisonous drugs and other things that have come down from the northern border from Canada. What Doge has really exposed is that this country may never have been free. That the freedom that we have in America really is quite possibly an illusion. What I mean by that is the deep state, the donors, and the bureaucracy have this financial scam going on at a level that none of us truly, I think, even still realize, even though it is being exposed. So right now, we have to worry about the sovereignty of our country, not just our borders, but this hijacking of really the entire country with all this corruption that Doge is exposing. I'm not going to go through all of it, but you guys, you all know what it is that I'm talking about. And when it comes to Europe, Europe's a mess. But Europe's always been a mess, okay? And I'm not telling you that we had 2 world wars over there. That's true, but there's been other things. Don't forget about Bosnia, the fake 40-year Cold War. It just goes on and on. And Europe, they decided to go the route of globalism so that their politicians and their corrupt bureaucracy and leaders, like the ones we have here, could get rich. And they started the European Union. They've had uncontrolled mass immigration to their entire continent, to the point where the United Kingdom is really no more. It's an Islamic country now. France is in a very similar situation. And a lot of other parts of Europe are in the similar boat. The only country in Europe that I have any respect for right now, they've got a great prime minister, is India. I'm sorry, not India, Italy. Another country with an I that's on another continent, not India, Italy. Because their prime minister, she's handling things properly when it comes to legal immigration. But the rest of Europe's a mess. And this German guy, how dare he? This grandchild or great-grandchild, probably grandchild of a Nazi, lecturing J.D. Vance, the vice president, to President Donald John Trump. He's got a lot of nerve. So, J.D. must have really said something right. And then I saw another clip that was from a woman. Let me see if I can find this. Yeah, okay. This is an English woman, and she is, you see, this J.D. Vance speech is huge news throughout Europe. It's got everyone in Europe in complete meltdowns. I know it's getting mentioned here in the United States, and maybe on the Sunday shows, and Monday it'll be big news here. But right now, this is like the biggest story in Europe. So here's a woman. Her name's June. She's in England. She's an English woman, and she's talking about JD's speech. Listen.
How refreshing to actually hear someone defend the rights of the peoples of Europe and Great Britain. Sadly, it came from an American called J.D. Vance at the Munich Security Conference, where he addressed the fact that leaders have cancelled elections because basically they don't want the other team to win. It was happening in our country with the council elections. This is for no other reason. You'll have to convince me very hard that it's for something quite practical. It's not. It's because someone's chomping at the bit to take your seat and you would lose power. It's taken an individual from America to actually address all the issues that are wrong, that mainly stem from unfettered immigration. Immigration that's not being managed properly. Immigration that's absolutely ruined the way Europeans live their life. Yeah, I'm sorry, when you go to the shops and people are putting barriers up to get to a Christmas market, and we have barriers within our town centres that are permanently there in Manchester and Liverpool and different places. That is our life being eroded. And nobody's bothered. These European leaders are not bothered. Our own leader is not bothered. They say the words, but there's no real feeling behind them. And what really concerns me, it took an American to come to Munich only days after a recent terror attack yet again, which is an attack on the way we live our lives, to actually bring all these issues to the forefront. And the audience was sat there in all their military uniforms. Oh yeah, let's talk about security. Let's talk about defending ourselves from China and Russia. What about defending ourselves from the people where the power's in the wrong hands within our own countries, who aren't listening to the electorate? Brexit never delivered. Sky-high prices for fuel, for heating, sky-high prices on the cost of living. Tariff to death. Well, billions are made through the companies that supply us with power. It's just wrong on every level, and nobody's sorting it out. They're just treating us like livestock on a tax farm. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Watch the speech by J.D. Vance. It's on Fox News, on YouTube. It's really quite uplifting to think there is actually somebody somewhere in the world that sees what's actually happening to people in Europe and Great Britain.
Okay, now that's absolutely amazing. So I'm thinking, wow, this is something else. I mean, this is amazing what JD Vance has done. And of course, all this is happening because of Donald Trump. I don't mean just that because Donald Trump picked JD and he did this great speech. That's obviously a big part. But Donald Trump, one thing I've noticed really since Trump was running the first time, because you guys know I have listeners all over the United States, but throughout the English speaking world and even non-English speaking countries where people watch me online or listen to me online. And I hear from people all over the world. And what I hear from people is this global feeling that people have, that they're inspired and hopeful in Donald Trump. And the way I've described President Trump and the Maga movement quite a bit was, and I still stand by this. It's a civil rights movement leading, and it's the largest civil rights movement in the history of the world, because what he's doing is President Trump is leading everyone to freedom from the tyranny of government. A lot of people over the years that get involved in different political movements love to compare themselves or their organizations to the great American founding fathers. And of course, the liberals hate the founding fathers, right? They were great men. President Trump is the only president or leader we've had since the founding father era that has that same spirit in him. And what he's doing is saving Western civilization, Western civilization is the heart of everything in this world, okay? It is the center of everything. It's what's made this world as great and as wonderful as it is Western civilization. And it's on the brink of collapse. And Europe is very far behind the United States. People on the left, they always say, oh, you MAGA people, you're a cult. No, the Never-Trumpers are the cult. All right, the Never-Trumpers are the cult. A cult is a small group of people that have this fanatical belief. MAGA, we're the majority of the country. President Trump just won this national election, winning all the battleground states, flipping a bunch of blue counties in California and other states. What he did is historic. The Never-Trumpers are the cult. The majority of the American people are on board with President Trump. Europe right now, you listen to these European leaders, they're like our political establishment in this country, Liz Cheney types who want endless war. And when I saw JD sitting at that table with Zelensky is just terrified that this war is going to end. And the death and destruction is, according to President Trump, is huge, far worse than anything we've known about or seen on television. And you got to ask yourself, why would Zelensky, a guy like this, okay, whose people are dying, why would he want this war to continue? Well, for money. And also, he's a dictator. His term of president is over. And when the war's over, they're going to have an election. And he won't be president. And he doesn't want that. Plus, the money will be stopping. It won't be coming anymore. It'll stop. And I know he's probably socked a lot away, but you know how these greedy, corrupt officials are. It's never enough money. But, like in this country, the establishment and the media are in a panic over the swamp draining. The same thing's going on with Europe right now, except they don't have their people, because they have a different style of government and the countries are small and there's so many. They don't have a unified movement that could take over. Plus, countries like Europe have been lost because they've been overrun so much by the mass immigration that's come to their country. So I want to take a moment, though, to tell you guys about Dr. Appleton and his laser wave pain treatment. You've heard me talk about Dr. Appleton many, many times. His laser wave pain treatment has rid me of pain 7 times. It is absolutely amazing. Dr. Appleton has seen thousands of patients. He is so good at what he does. And every time I've gone in there, he's examined me and he is able to determine where in my body the pain is coming from. And that's what he treats with the laser treatment. The laser treatment repairs the damage that's causing the pain. That's why the 7 times he's treated me, the pain has not returned. The laser treatment is 100% painless. There are no shots, no needles, no drugs, no downtime. Dr. Appleton performs all the laser treatments himself, and appointments are not necessary even on Saturdays. Walk-ins are always welcome with Dr. Appleton. We've had listeners travel from all over America to see Dr. Appleton, and now they are living without pain. You can live without pain too. Go see Dr. Appleton and say bye-bye to your pain. His number is 954-973-0710. 954-973-0710. And online, AppletonCairo.com. All right, we're going to take our first break. When we get back, I want to play some of the highlights of J.D. Vance's speech that has all these Europeans freaking out right now. You know Trump's proud of him, huh? Oh, yeah. You want these European people to be happy? No, you don't. Because they're just as bad, if not worse, than our people. They're trying to, what these European leaders are trying to do is get another world war going on in Europe because they're greedy and they want the money that a war brings. These are sick people. I'm Brian Craig. You're listening to the Brian Craig Show podcast. We're going to take our first break and be right back.
Are you a parent of a child who dreams of becoming a basketball superstar? That new book from author Timoteo Daramola, Sports Superstar IQ Builder for Kids. Basketball will teach them how to do just that. This book is a fun and interactive way to boost your child's basketball knowledge and their critical thinking skills. Packed with exciting quizzes, brain teasers, and interactive activities, it's designed to entertain, challenge, and inspire young learners. Your child will learn fun facts about basketball, test problem-solving skills, and develop teamwork, all while having a blast. Perfect for kids ages 3 to 12, whether they're just starting out or already love the game. Help your child focus, learn, and grow, all through the magic of basketball. Sports Superstar IQ Builder for Kids. Basketball from author Timoteo Daramola. Order your copy right now on Amazon and watch your child's basketball IQ soar. Experience the mystery, elegance, and soothing power of Dark Night candles. Only at candlesbyross.com. Handcrafted with care by Ross, the creator of the Dark Night candle line. These luxurious candles are designed to ease anxiety, relieve stress, and bring a serene glow to your home. Each flame represents resilience, strength, and quiet sophistication. Infused with deep, evocative fragrances, Dark Night candles are eco-friendly and handmade with care in the charming village of Grays Lake, Illinois. They're perfect for those who love modern luxury with a touch of mystique. Right now, enjoy free shipping and an exclusive buy two, get one free offer. No code needed. Shop the entire Dark Night candle collection today at candlesbyross.com. Let their glow bring warmth and serenity to your space. The Dark Night candle collection, where modern craftsmanship meets legendary spirit. Order now at candlesbyross.com. What if the price of fame was your soul? From author Matthew Campbell comes your next must-read book, Shadow Pact, A Deal with Darkness, available on Amazon. For Ron Taylor, the cost of stardom was worth it. His childhood friend Mark Winters thought he knew Ron better than anyone. But when Ron made a deal with a mysterious stranger, Mark was faced with a terrifying reality. His friend was slipping into darkness. As Ron's life spirals out of control, Mark must confront the ultimate question: can God's love pierce through even the darkest of shadows? Enter the heart-pumping, soul-stirring world of Shadow Pact, where the battle between light and darkness is real, and the stakes are higher than you ever imagined. Based on a true story, Shadow Pact is a gripping tale of redemption, of friendship, and of the transformative power of God's love. Will Mark's faith be enough to save Ron from the clutches of darkness? Find out when you read Shadow Pact, A Deal with Darkness, from author Matthew Campbell, and discover the truth. No one is ever too far gone for God's grace. Shadow Pact, A Deal with Darkness, from author Matthew Campbell, is available on Amazon and Kindle, paperback, and Kindle Unlimited. Order your copy right now. Brian here. Right now, Mike Lindell at MyPillow is offering his first ever mega sale. With our promo code KANE, K-A-N-E, at checkout, you could save big money on top MyPillow products, the MyPillow sheets, the MyPillow 6-piece towel set, the MyPillow that started it all, and much, much more. And free shipping on all orders. That's right, free shipping on all orders with our promo code KANE at checkout. You can also order by phone, 1-800-716-4879, 1-800-716-4879.
You are listening to The Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at BrianCraigShow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Brian Craig, and this is The Brian Craig Show podcast. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. You know, during the break, I started going through the sound bites from J.D. Vance. And then I realized the speech that he gave that has them all freaking out is 18 minutes and 59 seconds. It's 19 minutes. And this is not something I would normally do. You know, this speech, like, here's a tweet. Somebody tweeted the full speech, and it says this: watch every second of VP J.D. Vance laying a blowtorch to globalism and censorship at the Munich Security Conference. It's very much worth your time. And I don't know if I've ever done this. If I have, it was with President Trump and no one else. But I think I'm going to play the entire 19-minute speech. Would you guys mind that? I think it's a good idea to do. And I'll tell you why. There's a couple reasons why. One, everyone's freaking out about it. That's a reason right there to do it. But this is also kind of like J.D. Vance's coming out to the world as who he is, right? We know who he is. We've seen him. We've heard him talk. He was in, he's done some speeches. We've seen some interviews and things like this. But we really haven't seen J.D. Vance in a position to be presidential or not. So instead of playing the sound bites, I'm going to play the whole speech. Like I said, it is 18 minutes and 59 seconds long. I may stop from time to time and talk about something, or I may not. I don't know. But if you want to fast forward and don't want to hear the speech, it's 18 minutes and 59 seconds long. That's why I tell you exactly how long it is. But I think that we should listen to it, because at some point, we all of us have a bad taste in our mouths for vice presidents, right? Pence. Nobody likes Pence for good reason. And there is a 50-50, maybe even better than 50-50 chance that JD is going to be our nominee in 4 years. It could be someone else, something going to happen. But I think we should just play. So I'm just going to play. And like I said, I may stop from time to time. But if you don't want to hear JD's speech, fast forward 18 minutes and 59 seconds. Okay, so this is JD Vance at the Munich Security Conference.
Well, thank you, and thanks to all the gathered delegates and luminaries and media professionals, and thanks especially to the hosts of the Munich Security Conference for being able to put on such an incredible event. We're, of course, thrilled to be here. We're happy to be here. And, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is, of course, our shared values. And, it's great to be back in Germany. As you heard earlier, I was here last year as United States Senator. I saw Foreign Secretary David Lammy, and joked that both of us last year had different jobs than we have now. But now it's time for all of our countries, for all of us who have been fortunate enough to be given political power by our respective peoples, to use it wisely to improve their lives. And I want to say that, I was fortunate in my time here to spend some time outside the walls of this conference over the last 24 hours. And I've been so impressed by the hospitality of the people, even of course, as they're reeling from yesterday's horrendous attack. And the first time I was ever in Munich was with my wife, actually, who's here with me today, on a personal trip. And I've always loved the city of Munich, and I've always loved its people. And I just want to say that we're very moved, and our thoughts and prayers are with Munich and everybody affected by the evil inflicted on this beautiful community. We're thinking about you, we're praying for you, and we will certainly be rooting for you in the days and weeks to come. Now, I hope that's not the last bit of applause that I get, but we gather at this conference, of course, to discuss security. And normally, we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard.
Okay, now, I think he sounds pretty good, don't you? I think he sounds great. I really do. Can you see him being president in 4 years? I'm assuming he's talking about Zelensky. His term is over. He has declared martial law. It's an emergency, no election as long as the war's going on. Well, that's kind of vague because they could keep the war going on in all kinds of strange situations. We've never missed an election in any war, including the Civil War when the country was on the verge of collapsing. So right there, he's called out Zelensky.
And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values. We must live them. Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected. And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief.
Now, this is really interesting because, from my viewpoint, and I think for a lot of you, most everybody listening to me, he's not saying anything that's controversial, right? Free speech. But in Europe, like the socialist here, they don't believe in freedom. They think people are not smart enough to make choices about their own lives, that they need this overpowering government and all these fancy politicians to do it.
And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before.
Wow.
Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation. Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth. So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
I got to tell you, he's hit. It really tells you what Europe's all about. Europe is a place for tyranny, death, destruction, arrogance, classism, zero freedom of speech. They still have, even though, the monarchies are pretty much gone, they still, though, live in this era of nobility and then the serfs. And that's the way it is. Now, I'm going to play the rest of this. I honestly can tell you that everything he's saying, we all agree on, don't we? I mean, how can you not agree with what J.D. Vance has said? Now, I want to thank our Patreon supporters for their support of the program. And if you would like to support the program by becoming a Patreon supporter, that'd be greatly appreciated. And, when you're a Patreon supporter, you do have access to commercial-free editions of all of our podcast episodes. And I know a lot of you have noticed and know that I've been working, broadcasting on the radio from my home studio. I was able to put together and construct a broadcast quality sounding radio studio from home, which saves me minimum 2 hours of driving every day, thanks to those of you who are Patreon supporters. So I want to thank all of you. And if you'd like to become a Patreon supporter, there is a link in the description of this and every episode. Our top Patreon supporters get a live on-air thank you shout-out on every episode. So the names you will hear now are our top Patreon supporters. I want to thank Andrew and Connie, Christine, ETW, Chuck, D, Pamela, Frank, Dale, Rick, Nick, Wesley, Macho, Mike P., Carlos, Paulette, John, Heather, David, Maria in Texas, Richard, Alice, K-Mac, LeeZep, Shawna, Constance, George, Brandon, Rob and Trish Wilkerson, Christy R, John S, and thank you again for all of your support. All right, so let's get back to this. I mean, I am very impressed with JD Vance. Are you? Yeah, I'm very much am. Let's get back to it.
Now, we're at the point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors.
Now, I'm going to tell you something. One of the things that is impressing me so much in JD's speech here, this is a speech full of very specific grievances that he has with the way things are run in Europe and, Romania. I mean, who knows what's going on in Romania? Well, JD Vance does. So this wasn't just some vague speech of, vague generalities and platitudes. Don't ask what your country can do for you and tear down this not that those are negative, bad speeches, but they're vague. Tear down this wall. He's being very specific about things that are going on locally in these European countries that never even make the news in the United States. I think that's pretty impressive. I'm very curious to know what went into crafting this speech. Does JD Vance, did he do this on his own with a couple assistants? Does he have some very advanced speech writers? How does he know so much detail about what's going on in places like Romania?
Now, as I understand it, the argument was that Russian disinformation had infected the Romanian elections. But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising.
All right, the video reset on me, so I fast forwarded it a little bit. I had to stop for a second and fast forward it, so you might hear some of it over, but let me get back to it.
Is that I happen to think your democracies are substantially less brittle than many people apparently fear. And I really do believe that allowing our citizens to speak their mind will make them stronger still. Which, of course, brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations. Now, again, we don't have to agree with everything or anything that people say. But when political leaders represent an important constituency, it is incumbent upon us to at least participate in dialogue with them. Now, to many of us on the other side of the Atlantic, it looks more and more like old entrenched interests hiding behind ugly Soviet-era words like misinformation and disinformation, who simply don't like the idea that somebody with an alternative viewpoint might express a different opinion or, God forbid, vote a different way or, even worse, win. JD Vance here, and you can tell me if you agree with this or not. I'm glad I didn't do this in the sound bites. I'm glad, because I had not heard the whole speech. I heard some of the sound bites, and this speech reminds me a lot of President Trump's speech at the second inauguration. I talked about this at the time when we were at Wings Plus for our Trump inauguration event. One of our listeners who was there, Irma. She goes on our cruises with her husband, Gary. And she says, this is a roast. He's roasting these people. I agree. And I said, yeah, you're right. I love that. That's exactly, you're right. What a great observation, Irma. Well, that's what JD is doing. He is roasting Europe because they are not free. And he's going through these very specific things that they're doing to suppress any viewpoints that question the authority. An election. Now, this is a security conference, and I'm sure you all came here prepared to talk about how exactly you intend to increase defense spending over the next few years in line with some new target. And that's great, Because as President Trump has made abundantly clear, he believes that our European friends must play a bigger role in the future of this continent. We don't think, you hear this term, burden sharing, but we think it's an important part of being in a shared alliance together that the Europeans step up while America focuses on areas of the world that are in great danger. But let me also ask you, how will you even begin to think through the kinds of budgeting questions if we don't know what it is that we're defending in the first place? I've heard a lot already in my conversations, and I've had many, many great conversations with many people gathered here in this room. I've heard a lot about what you need to defend yourselves from, and of course that's important. But what has seemed a little bit less clear to me, and certainly I think to many of the citizens of Europe, is what exactly it is that you're defending yourselves for. What is the positive vision that animates this shared security compact that we all believe is so important?
That, this is something. You're talking about NATO. What are in 2025? This is wow. Is he not a smart guy or what? Is JD Vance on? What he's saying is, what are we allied for? What shared views do we have? Are we really allies? Or is this a habit from long ago that we have? Do we have anything in common so far as our worldview, our values? Should we even have an alliance? JD Vance is asking some big questions here. Oh, man.
And I believe deeply that there is no security if you are afraid of the voices, the opinions, and the conscience that guide your very own people. Europe faces many challenges, but the crisis this continent faces right now, the crisis I believe we all face together, is one of our own making. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you.
That's right.
Nor, for that matter, is there anything that you can do for the American people who elected me and elected President Trump. You need democratic mandates to accomplish anything of value in the coming years. Have we learned nothing that thin mandates produce unstable results? But there is so much of value that can be accomplished with the kind of democratic mandate that I think will come from being more responsive to the voices of your citizens. If you're going to enjoy competitive economies, if you're going to enjoy affordable energy and secure supply chains, then you need mandates to govern, because you have to make difficult choices to enjoy all of these things. And of course, we know that very well in America. You cannot win a democratic mandate by censoring your opponents or putting them in jail, whether that's the leader of the opposition, a humble Christian praying in her own home, or a journalist trying to report the news.
Now, this is an interesting thing, because while he's giving specific examples of this in Europe, and it's certainly there, he's also talking about what's happened here. Political leaders in Trump, right? J6ers, people that were put in prison. The grandmother that Biden sent to prison for praying in front of a abortion clinic. Remember that? So it's interesting. And this what he's talking about is, you hear this talk that went on during the campaign about a national divorce. What he's really talking about is, should there be a divorce between the United States and Europe? And these pissed off European leaders that I played a clip of, the one earlier, there'll be more. I'm not going to play any more. I'm going to finish JD's speech, but I'm not going to play any more of the gripers. But there'll be more all over social media as the days go on over this, because they are outraged. But JD is right. What do we have in common with Europe right now? We had a lot in common in the Second World War, right? The Cold War, even though I believe was completely faked by the military-industrial complex, we had a common goal to keep freedom alive, democracy alive, capitalism alive against, communism, oppression. But what do we have now? Should there be a divorce between the United States and Europe? And what JD Vance is talking about here is, should the NATO alliance exist any longer? Is it out of date? Should we not have it? This was the big debate. I've mentioned this a few times because it's very important. President Kennedy, when he became president, he gave a copy of a book called The Guns of August. He gave it to every member of his cabinet and told them to read it. And The Guns of August it's a very good book about the First World War. And the beginning of it is about how the war began. And this is a very common thing that you all know. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into it, but the war began because of these crazy alliances. You've heard entangling alliances. You don't want to ever have entangling alliances. And that's why World War I happened, which led to the Second World War. And J.D. Vance, that's kind of what he's talking about here. Do we have alliances that are in conflict? I mean, I think every point he made and is making is so valid. Let's get back to this. I am, this is this is the kind of thing I can't do on the radio. Play a full 19-minute speech like this. There's no way I'd be able to do it, but I can do it here. So, and I'm glad I did. I wish I would have watched it when it first dropped, but I figured, the Munich Security Conference. How interesting can that be? If it was Trump, I would not have missed it. And listening to this great speech by JD and sound bites, I don't think does it justice at all. The sound bites are good, but it doesn't do it justice. I think you got to hear the whole thing like I'm doing to get the context and the real true power of what he's saying.
Nor can you win one by disregarding your basic electorate on questions like who gets to be a part of our shared society. And of all the pressing challenges that the nations represented here face, I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone. And of course, it's gotten much higher since. And we know this situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. And of course, I can't bring it up again without thinking about the terrible victims who had a beautiful winter day in Munich ruined. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and will remain with them. But why did this happen in the first place? It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction? No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants. But you know what they did vote for? In England, they voted for Brexit, and agree or disagree, they voted for it. And more all over Europe, they're voting for political leaders who promise to put an end to out-of-control migration. Now, I happen to agree with a lot of these concerns, but you don't have to agree with me. I just think that people care about their homes, they care about their dreams, they care about their safety and their capacity to provide for themselves and their children. And they're smart. I think this is one of the most important things I've learned in my brief time in politics. Contrary to what you might hear a couple mountains over in Davos, the citizens of all of our nations don't generally think of themselves as educated animals or as interchangeable cogs of a global economy. And it's hardly surprising that they don't want to be shuffled about or relentlessly ignored by their leaders. And it is the business of democracy to adjudicate these big questions at the ballot box. I believe that dismissing people, dismissing their concerns, or worse yet, shutting down media, shutting down elections, or shutting people out of the political process protects nothing. In fact, it is the most surefire way to destroy democracy. And speaking up and expressing opinions isn't election interference. Even when people express views outside your own country, and even when those people are very influential. And trust me, I say this with all humor. If American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk. But what German democracy, what no democracy...
That fell flat a little bit with those people because they look up to Greta Thunberg. They're afraid to criticize her or they agree with her. But don't worry, JD. In America, your constituents in America, we were laughing. That was very funny. Very good point.
American, German, or European will survive is telling millions of voters that their thoughts and concerns, their aspirations, their pleas for relief are invalid or unworthy of even being considered. Democracy rests on the sacred principle that the voice of the people matters. There's no room for firewalls. You either uphold the principle or you don't. Europeans, the people, have a voice. European leaders have a choice. And my strong belief is that we do not need to be afraid of the future. You can embrace what your people tell you, even when it's surprising, even when you don't agree. And if you do so, you can face the future with certainty and with confidence, knowing that the nation stands behind each of you. And that, to me, is the great magic of democracy. It's not in these stone buildings or beautiful hotels. It's not even in the great institutions that we have built together as a shared society. To believe in democracy is to understand that each of our citizens has wisdom and has a voice. And if we refuse to listen to that voice, even our most successful fights will secure very little. As Pope John Paul II, in my view, one of the most extraordinary champions of democracy on this continent or any other, once said, "Do not be afraid." We shouldn't be afraid of our people, even when they express views that disagree with their leadership. Thank you all. Good luck to all of you. God bless you.
Wow. I mean, I'm really glad I played that whole thing and heard it in context. That was so impressive. And, the things I said along the way, I could not, I just cannot stress. I could say all that over again with even more emphasis at the end, because he really roasted Europe like no one's business. Now, I want to tell you guys about Tom Laporta at Laporta Contracting and Roofing. If you're in the state of Florida and you need roof repair, replacement for any type of structure, Tom Laporta can help you. Residential, commercial, municipal. One of our listeners called me the other day. They said they have a church and they had Tom Laporta come out to take a look at the roof of their church. He does every type of roof for every type of structure. He works with every type of roofing material, and he can handle the job of any size. If it's a single building, a single family home, or a community, an HOA, a condo community, an apartment complex that has hundreds of units, he can handle those too. I'm going to give you his cell phone number and his website. His website is laportaroofing.com, but his cell phone number is not at laportaroofing.com. The number there is the main office number. You can bypass all that. Go directly to the owner of the company himself, Tom Laporta. And you can call or text him at this number, 954-604-4602. 954-604-4602. All right, I'm going to take our last break, come back. There's a lot more to talk about. And let me know in the comments on whatever platform you're listening on your thoughts on J.D. Vance and that speech. I'm blown away by it. And I think you guys are too. I mean, the haters are going to hate. The trolls aren't going to approve of it. But those people that are MAGA, would you be comfortable with him being the second MAGA president with maybe, I don't know who is his vice president, Pete Hegseth? I wouldn't mind. All right, we're going to take our last break. When we come back, there's so much more to discuss. My name is Brian Craig. This is the Brian Craig Show podcast. Don't go anywhere. Back after this.
From author Davon B. Ellison comes a children's book the entire family will enjoy together. The Adventures of Little Ava, available on Amazon. You and your kids will join Little Ava on an unforgettable journey through an enchanting forest. The Adventures of Little Ava is a magical book that will bring the story to life Each page is a new adventure. This heartwarming tale celebrates the joy of storytelling, the magic of imagination, and the power of friendship. It's perfect for bedtime reading, and teachers, this is a must-have for your classroom reading collection. Parents, you'll watch your little ones' faces light up as they journey with Ava through a world of wonder. Order your copy of The Adventures of Little Ava from author Davon B. Ellison on Amazon and begin a magical journey with your children. Brian here. Right now, Mike Lindell at MyPillow is offering his first ever mega sale. With our promo code KANE, K-A-N-E, at checkout, you could save big money on top MyPillow products, the MyPillow sheets, the MyPillow 6-piece towel set, the MyPillow that started it all, and much, much more. And free shipping on all orders. That's right, free shipping on all orders with our promo code KANE at checkout. You can also order by phone, 1-800-716-4879, 1-800-716-4879. Parenting is tough, but giving bad advice, that's easy. The Bad Dad Advice Podcast is where 4 dads, a rookie, and 2 so-called pros share their hilariously terrible takes on fatherhood. Need sleep training tips? They got them. Will they work? Doubt it. Trying to keep your house clean? Lower your expectations. Bad Dad Advice is a casual, no-pressure, all-laughs podcast about the ups and downs of being a dad. Make sure you subscribe because they really need this podcast to do well. If this podcast fails, the guys are stuck doing chores. New episodes of Bad Dad Advice drop each week. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Bad Dad Advice Podcast, the worst advice you'll ever love. Start listening right now.
This is Dr. Philip Appleton. I'm a chiropractic physician. I've seen thousands and thousands of patients in my career. I've been a chiropractic physician here in Pompano Beach for 40 years. We're open 6 days a week. If you have sciatica, you have bursitis, you have tendonitis, you're tired of taking the pills, the drugs, the injections, and you heard that you have to live with it. Well, there's a lot of times you don't have to live with it. I've had great success with helping people. My testimonials are marvelous with patients. They love the treatment because no injections, there's no medication, there's no surgery, there's none of that. It's strictly either the laser or the acupuncture I do or shockwave therapy I do. Open 6 days a week. Come in for the free consultation and be willing to look at you and help you.
Take advantage of that no-charge consultation with Dr. Appleton. Remember, appointments are not necessary and walk-ins are welcome even on Saturdays. 954-973-0710. 954-973-0710. And online, AppletonChiro.com.
You are listening to The Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at BrianCraigShow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Brian Craig, and thanks for tuning in. Okay, the left in the media, they just have no clue as to what's going on, okay? The Democrats, the entire left in the media, they know they're out. They know they're irrelevant. You know, I saw an article today, and it was talking about all the celebrities at the Super Bowl and things, and they said the Super Bowl is proof that being a Republican is cool. And that is true. It's very true. And being a Democrat is uncool. I mean, the Democrats are out there taking the dumbest positions, not just the sports thing and all of that, but, you know, they're openly coming out in favor of stealing money from the government. It's like a right. They're acting like it's a constitutional right to take taxpayer money and do all these things. And they, instead of, Democrats, Democrats never take responsibility. Just liberals can't take personal responsibility for anything. They always want to blame someone else for everything, right? They never want to take responsibility. So as opposed to saying, well, the American people have rejected our viewpoints, they go back to the same thing they always go back to. We just are not messaging well enough. So I'm watching the liberals do something that is so bizarre. Every time I look at the news every day, there's 2 podcasts I hear about all the time. One, I can't remember the name of it. It's a man and a woman. They're old. They are very boring. They're liberal. I saw them on CNN the other day, and I see them quoted and pictures of them and all these things on the whatever podcast. They said this and this, but the one that I'm seeing all the time. In fact, I was a little troubled by this. They were even on with Jesse Waters a couple weeks ago. Pod Save America. Like right now, here's a headline. It's on Mediaite, and I see this. There's hardly a day that goes by that I don't see Pod Save America quoted somewhere. Pod Save America hosts lose it over plan to rename Greenland for Trump. They say, quote, country is being run by the stupidest effing people. Who cares what the Pod Save America, these are liberal people, I guess they worked for Obama or something. Who cares what the Pod Save America host or any other liberal has to say? No one wants to hear what they have to say, but they know this, the left, okay? They believe that because President Trump gets so much attention on these podcast interviews, that they need to be on podcast. That's where it's at now. We got to get on podcast. If we get on podcast, we'll win. That's where the listeners are now. So we'll just get our liberal crap on podcast, and then we'll, and all this publicity of Pod Save America and this other one. I don't know what the name of the other one is. It's not important. But they get space in the news somehow, and they think that gives them credibility, like like they're players now. Okay, we're in podcast. This is what the left did back in the early 2000s during the Iraq War with Air America Radio. And, Rush was always popular. And when I was kind of new in talk radio is when Rush Limbaugh was exploding nationally. And when I first started working, in fact, I remember I would go into the grocery stores here in Florida, and they had life-size cardboard cutout advertisements in the aisles of the grocery stores of Rush Limbaugh. And it would tell you what station he was on in your local market. I couldn't believe, I never seen anything like wow, how did this happen? I thought it was pretty cool. I'd like to have that. Would you guys like to see me in the aisle of a grocery store? Not near the eggs. People would just be pissed. But I remember when I first started working with Steve Kane, the Democrats, this was in the 90s, the Democrats were going around looking for a liberal host to be the Rush alternative. And they tried a whole bunch of people, and some of them were pretty well-known people at that. And they all failed. And then during the Iraq War, Rush Limbaugh was doing very well then. He was huge. And this was like 04, 03. They came up with this idea to do Air America Radio, which was going to be the liberal alternative to Rush. And they put a bunch of people on there. Rachel Maddow did the mornings. They had Al Franken, Janine Garofalo, Randy Rhodes, if anybody remembers her, and a bunch of others. And it failed. One thing about Air America, the liberal radio network, it was nationally syndicated, and it was based out of New York City. It took over, I can't remember the call letters. Somebody will remember the call letters. I'm not going to Google it and just put it in the comments. They took over, their home base radio station was a black radio station. They fired everybody, not just the on-air people, all the office people, the board ops, everybody there was black. They fired an entire staff of black people to bring in these white liberals for Air America Radio. And no one in the press ever mentioned that. I knew because of the station. Was it WLIB? Does anyone remember what station they took over? I can't remember. It was a black radio station. They fired the receptionist, everyone. And all this talk about Pod Save America and, like Air America Radio. And there have been some big name liberals that have tried to do shows over the years that have failed. The reason that these liberal podcasters are going to fail, they're not going to move the needle, is the same reason all these other big shot liberals over the years have failed doing talk shows on the radio. No one wants to hear that liberal crap. Okay, no one wants to hear it. It has no credibility. What I do, I take live calls screenless. I do it on YouTube. I do it on the radio. When I'm streaming on YouTube, when I'm not on the radio, I do it. And that is not an easy thing to do. I mean, it's easy for me now, but it took me a lot of years to learn how to do that. And I was very lucky that Steve Kane was my mentor and still is, and taught me how to do that. And that is not an easy thing to take screenless calls from random people anywhere. You don't know what they're going to say, what they're going to ask about. And I have to be able to talk about it and handle it and answer it. I know it looks easy or sounds easy when you're listening. It's just because I've been doing it so long and I'm so good at it. I make it look easy. But the problem with liberalism cannot stand up in a debate with logic. That's why Jennings on CNN is cleaning everybody's clock all the time, because they have him there with all these liberal loons, and the liberalism doesn't hold up, even if you mildly go after them. So these liberals can go around and the Democrats can put a bunch of money into liberal podcasts, and they can have all these questions telling us what they said about this, like people care what they think. It's not going to work. People don't want to hear that crap. And that's just the reality of it. Now, a follow-up on what I was talking about in the last segment. Listen to this. This story just dropped this afternoon. Trump envoy sparks fury as Europe is excluded from the Ukraine-Russian peace talks. Macron has called for an emergency summit. U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, age 80, wow, has encouraged Europe to join the conversation about the Ukraine-Russian conflict, but ultimately said they won't have a final say in the resolution. That is not going to happen, he said at the Munich Security Conference today. And to my European friends, I would say, get into the debate, not by, it goes on and on. No, they are being cut out. And the reason they're being cut out is Europe, like Nikki Haley, right? They don't want the war to end. They want it to go on and on. They want it to go on forever because there's money in it. It's their USAID. What President Trump has done here it's brilliant, but it shows how much power he has. Maybe he had this much power the first time, but he was surrounded by people that were undermining him. So maybe he couldn't wield the power. I think Trump has always been incredibly popular. He's a little more popular now because a lot of people have woken up because of the lawfare and all the suffering and everything that we've gone through, over the 4 years but he is doing the right thing, cutting out Europe. There is nothing productive going to come out of Europe. They're not players. Those days are over. The players are the United States and Russia. Ukraine is barely a player in the peace talks to end the war in their own country. Really, right? They're a joke. They're clowns. So this is awesome. And things are going to happen fast. We're just going to find out one day that it's over and it's been settled. And if Putin gets to keep some of Ukraine, so what? Do any of you care? Really? Do any of you care? I want to tell you guys, the free shipping offer continues at mypillow.com with my promo code Kane at checkout, Kane. And, there's huge savings, as much as 80% on some of the most popular MyPillow products. And remember, every time you use our promo code Kane at checkout at mypillow.com, you're supporting not just my podcast, but my YouTube channel, as well as the radio show. And it's greatly appreciated. And Mike Lindell appreciates it. And your response to MyPillow is phenomenal, and please keep doing that. And the free shipping offer, remember, is on all orders, no matter how small. There's no limitations on that. It is free shipping site-wide on all orders on top of the huge discount you're getting. So it's a great deal. It's promo code Kane, Kane, at checkout at mypillow.com. All right, guys. Well, listen, thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time. My name's Brian Craig. This is where MAGA comes to talk.